Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be talking about something that I think is important to talk about. I think that a lot of people will potentially like this video, so I'm really hoping it can get traction because these precons I'm going to talk about here are all easily adaptable, super upgradable. You know, these are what I'm going to kind of term as evergreen precons. So a little bit of an intro. Some precons are just easier to upgrade than others. This can be for a variety of different reasons. And because they are easier to upgrade, I'm going to consider them something like evergreen, right? They'll get upgrades in most sets and essentially be eternally kind of a thing that you can play around with. They can be your pet deck kind of thing. You might end up Ship of Theseusing it, where you end up replacing most of it and kind of stuff, but it did start out as a precon, and the staples typically will come in that precon. Now, tribal and kindred sets, precons generally can't be evergreen because most of them will not get support in very many sets. Say, for example, the most recent Squirreled Away one. The squirrels are not going to get much support in, for a while potentially, or the Doctor Who ones and stuff like that, right? Any kind of mechanic that isn't likely to kind of come back isn't going to be an evergreen one, or any kind of, creature type isn't going to be either. So what I'm talking about for evergreen is essentially the second definition here: retaining freshness and interest, universally and continually relevant, not limited in applicability to a particular event or date. Essentially, because of, what they exist, because of what their themes are and stuff, they are going to be around forever. You can continuously upgrade them. You can get new toys for them every set. And that's kind of a nice thing to have, is not having nearly every single one of your decks be made up of these evergreen ones, but even having a couple is nice because then you get to look at new sets and get excited more about new sets kind of thing. So some big notes here. First of all, these decks I'm mentioning are not necessarily all going to be great out of the box. Some really want some upgrades, but you will get those nice kind of staples and stuff from them generally. But that's okay because, that's literally what this video is about. Ones that you can upgrade, precons that are fun to upgrade and that you'll get a lot of fun out of. If you know, if you want to know the best precons to buy, however, I do have another separate video on that. I'll put that link down into the comments. All right. And make sure you subscribe, share the video around and everything along those lines. So I'll start off with these three. So this is three separate ones. However, they all generally follow exactly the same kind of thematic. They are auras and equipments. You've got auras with Elavir, and then equipment and auras with Dogmeat and Chithro. The Virtue and Valor upgrades Unleashed, and then Scrappy Survivors is kind of includes that equipment there. Nearly every single set that comes out will have new auras and new equipments of varying different strengths. There's also lots in the various sets that have come out, a huge back catalog of them dating back to almost the start of the game. So you can add a huge amount of different flavor in there, whether you want, just all swords, like you want a equipment Dogmeat deck that's got all swords and auras around swords and stuff. Or you could have an Elavir deck where your thematic is around the rolls, or based around animal kind of auras and stuff. You could do a huge amount of things with these decks. Because of the fact that there is just a huge amount of different upgrades that you can add to them, dating back, as I said, almost back to the start of the game. We've got the Family Matters one. So this one here is based on ETB effects primarily, and then doubling them by making tokens and stuff with Offspring and, tokens as well. Every set has new creatures that come with ETBs, and they obviously date back ages as well. All the way back to the start of the game, there's going to be creatures with ETBs. Also, there's a lot of token support in sets, and there's more all the time. Stuff that's token doublers, token triplers, token, buffers and stuff like that. There's also just a bunch of 1-power creatures with ETBs as well, which means they will still buff up your Zinnia. We've got the Animated Army one. So this is another new one. These two here are both, these are both from Bloomberry. You're going to be able to get them pretty easily and potentially pretty cheaply too. So Animated Army, it's based around combat focus, so it's focused on combat, but auras and opposite, non-auras and non-equipment artifacts and enchants. So there's just so many choices for different ones for this. Like any kind of red enchantment could potentially be focused, or a lot of them are going to be focused on combat, or even like card draw and stuff still going to be important here. And you know, there's just a lot of different ones that just have huge combat bonuses that buff up your creatures, and then they become creatures. And they don't even need to be like combat focused. There's just value, right? Like even something, as I said, something that draws you cards is still going to be huge here. It also can work with vehicles, which is really fun. Like Bellow can turn vehicles into these elementals that can go and attack. So there's obviously a whole bunch of vehicles. It's not a hugely supported kind of archetype, but you can add in the vehicles in with, like, you know, the huge amount of enchants and artifacts. We've got the most wanted one. So this here is based around treasures and outlaws, right? But outlaw is a huge category. So this one here is, I wouldn't really consider it like a tribal kindred one, because outlaw is just like a kind of grouping of those. But any assassins, mercs, pirates, rogues, warlocks in the Mardu colors can go in here. Again, these have been around forever and they'll continue being around forever. In fact, even within the most recent Blue Burrow set, we got some of these guys, right? Like, you know, there's just a huge amount of them. There's also a bunch of treasure support in a huge amount of different sets as well, which has been ramping up in recent sets. Like we've got, you know, treasures coming and becoming more on the, like the forefront, especially like around red and stuff. The red color has had a huge amount of different treasure cards or treasure creating cards, and those are great here. Right, we've got Paradox Power, and then I've got down here Exit from Exile too. Now, Exit from Exile, I've got down lower because it is going to be harder for you to be able to find it at a reasonable price. But still, both of these are based around playing cards from anywhere but your hand. Only Exile for Feldorn, but 13th Doctor and whichever other Doctor you want to run as your commander there, they're based around just playing cards from anywhere but your hand. But that, again, is a kind of area that's been expanded upon a whole bunch. You know, even like the most recent plot mechanic from OTJ was playing cards from Exile. You know, there's ones that are like play cards from your graveyard and stuff. Like 6 gives all of your cards in your graveyard retrace, which is huge and can work really well here. You know, there's just a huge amount of different support for just playing cards from anywhere but your hand. And the train's not going to stop on them. They're just going to keep building more cards that are going to be play cards from outside of your hand, and, you know, from your graveyard, from Exile, from, you know, your friend's deck, whatever. We've got Riders of Rohan. So this is one of the actual tribal ones that I've put on here, but that's because the tribe that is selected here was humans, and humans are everywhere. They're on nearly every plane, nearly every set. Like Bloomberry doesn't, and Lorwyn/Shadowmoor didn't, I don't believe, but you know, nearly every single set will have humans within it, which you can use here. There's also just a bunch of different token stuff, which, as I said before, is getting a bunch of, you know, support for. There's a bunch of combat focused stuff, which again gets a huge amount of support. And there's like the monarch in here as a theme as well, which you could do some very interesting things with that if you want to focus more primarily on that. I'm just focusing more on like the human side of it, but like you could still keep that monarch sub theme there as like an interesting kind of side thing. We've got Cavalry Charge. So this one here is going to be harder to find. It is rather expensive because it's so sought after, but that's also because it can be upgraded in, again, a huge amount of different ways. This is Knight Tribal / Kindred with a discard side theme. Knights, again, will be continuing to get new cards in nearly every set. They are basically universal. We got more Knights within Bloomburrow as well. There's like a few different knights within that. You know, there's going to be knights forever and ever. Like even like the most recent Assassin's Creed set had a huge amount of them. Graveyard play as well, because we've got that discard kind of side theme there. Graveyard play within, you know, Orzhov colors is going to be around forever. There's just so many knights that you can also just do sub themes. If you want all flying knights, you could potentially do that. If you want all human knights, well, there's 300 different human knights alone, right? We've got Urza's Iron Alliance. So this one here is based around artifact creatures. Again, artifact creatures are in nearly every set. There's a bunch of support for artifact creatures already. You can get a huge amount of them. Black alone has so many artifact creatures within previous sets and stuff, especially if you look at like the 40k Necron deck, which is my friend's kind of pet deck that he's upgraded a whole bunch. There is a lot of stuff within that that could potentially go into this. I mean, to be fair, that Necron deck could almost be included in this as well because of the fact that it's artifact creatures plus returning things from your graveyard, right? There's a lot of support for artifact creatures too within this deck, a lot of staples that you want for your robots. We've got the Legends Legacy. This is probably the one that kind of, I think, first came to mind when we were talking about this, was that it is literally just legendary creatures within Mardu, and a bunch of them kind of supporting each other and stuff. Legendary creatures are literally in every set, as well as Universes Beyond. As they kind of ramp up more Universes Beyond stuff coming, I think there's 2 Universes Beyond sets every year. There is going to be heaps more within those, because of the fact that, like, you know, if you're talking about Marvel, the people that people want to play as in Marvel are all those big name heroes, which are legendary creatures, right? There's just so many different legendaries that you can just make a huge amount of like sub themes here. You could go aristocrats with it. You could go combat. You could go flicker. You could do whatever you bloody want. So many ways to upgrade and build it as well. And now the last one here is the Rebellion Rising deck. So this is a token-based combat deck within Boros colors. You've got Boros, which is combat focus. You've got Boros, which is, you know, a whole bunch of different creature tokens and stuff. Like, there's just, it's going to be so simple to upgrade this one. And because it is just creature tokens, there are so many different cards that work with it. Also, as we talked about, a bunch of token supports, a bunch of token multipliers happening nearly every set. So that's it for today. I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you guys think about this kind of idea of evergreen precons, precons that you can get upgrades for nearly every set, get excited for with a huge amount of different sets, because, you know, you could potentially find your new kind of pet card that you want to upgrade and, you know, make your big kind of Ship of Theseus deck and have fun with it. I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think. Have a great day. Goodbye.